Sodhi, for the first life lost to hate crimes after 9/11. His death was undoubtedly the byproduct of ignorance and hatred and would define the prejudice that my community would endure in an increasingly xenophobic America. But while discrimination still remains a fundamental reality of being a Sikh American, what is often underregarded is that not all Sikhs process their experiences in the same way. For a while, even I subscribed to the idea of my community being a monolith. But when the 2016 election cycle began emboldening polarizing political ideologies, many of the folk that I grew up with found themselves at odds with each other. For my project, I was going to travel from my home state of New Jersey to Dallas, Texas, in an effort to understand how various characteristic-based determinants played into the ideologies held by Sikh Americans in a specific community. I was particularly interested in how Texas's traditionally conservative landscape would inform its constituents differently than the more liberal area that I came from. While my project was predicated on meeting people of different identities, I came into the summer with some reservations. Namely, I was leaving a community in which I had many strong networks that I had cultivated in my 21 years of living there. Given the intimate questions I was looking to ask subjects of my project, I was concerned that I wouldn't be received well by a group of people that had only known me for one summer. Nevertheless, I pushed forward with three considerations in mind. I wanted to establish rapport with the Dallas Sikh community, potentially utilize my connections back home to see if I could facilitate relationships in Dallas. But more specifically, I wanted to be intentional about speaking with folk across many gender, socioeconomic, and national identities. And the way to do that was to have boots on the ground and fall into the community I was around. My summer began with pictures, and lots of them. When I asked the leadership at Dallas Places of Worship about how I could contribute to the community, almost all of them said I could take pictures of services for their websites. I quickly obliged and used the opportunity to get to meet and befriend some of the wonderful community members. What was inherently rewarding about this process is that it allowed me to get closer to my religious community, one that I felt myself getting further away from through college. Having gotten less religious in college, I felt ashamed of associating myself with a group of folk who were more committed to Sikhism than I was. But it was incredibly refreshing being around non-judgmental and loving folk who accepted me for who I was. So many aspects of the Dallas community reminded me of my upbringing in New Jersey. This was a Sikh martial arts demonstration put on by children, similar to the ones I would participate in middle school. Dallas began feeling a lot like home, except for one thing. Whenever I would try asking questions relevant to my project to community members I was thought I had become very close to, they would immediately cut me off, or at best give me an evidently vague response. And after the fourth and fifth time of this happening, I couldn't help but think that there was a disconnect between building community trust and gaining insight into their tribulations. And there's a very big reason as to why that is. Unbeknownst to me, Dallas had been a hotbed of racial violence in the years after 9/11. This isn't unique to the city, but I would later find out that media outlets were contorting accounts given by my Sikh community members to portray them in a negative light. More recently, in Houston, up until last month, there was the Sikh deputy police officer who was the first of his kind, who was shot and killed by an individual with no regard of intention whatsoever. I mean, how could anyone possibly expect a community to be forthcoming about their beliefs when they feel as though there is quite literally a target on their back? How can we expect individuals who have been marginalized for so long to act in the interests of other individuals? For a while, I was disappointed because I thought I had failed during my civic summer. But having essentially integrated into the community by this point, I realized that my miscalculation was incredibly insightful. The whole point of the project was to challenge the monolith, and I had believed that the Dallas community would behave the same way that I thought my community back home would. That is not true, of course, given the history of the Dallas community, but I am nothing but grateful for everyone that I met in my time there, and they welcomed me with such open arms. For a long time, I didn't think I would ever find peace in my religion again, but my appreciation for them is best conveyed through the excerpt from my prayer. Lak khushiyan pachaya, se satgur pacha diya, which means thank you for everything that you do and your selflessness. And after the summer, I have learned that where we grow up plays a large, unique role in who we are and who we become. And I want to analyze location as an inherent determinant in ideological development. I'm also super excited about online interviews that I have coming up, including activists, music artists, and even politicians that don't have the same politics that I do. But at the end of the day, Balbir Singh Sodhi is more than a statistic. He was a vibrant Sikh man with a hearty laugh and a reservoir of stories that helped shape his life. He never knew me, but he inspires me every day to challenge myself and look deeper into those that think both like and unlike I do. I'm eternally indebted to this community and am determined to give it back through this project. Thank you very much.